I want to tell you a little story. Recently, my family was invited to the house of a very good friend of mine. We met their family for the first time. Somehow I managed to completely mess up, let me tell you. First of all, in the starting minutes of the conversation, I got very disengaged because my dad was speaking a lot, and somehow that got to me in whatever way, shape, or form. I still don't necessarily understand it. But then I stopped talking for the majority of that day. I was really aversive with my eye contact, so I kept looking at the floor anywhere else other than their faces, even though they weren't the problem. At some point, it all culminated in a moment where I started to speak, my dad interrupted me, and I got really mad, and I was just like, for God's sake, everyone heard that. They were apologizing. The hosts were apologizing because they thought they interrupted me. In the end, what really happened is I let myself down. Usually I'm a great communicator, and in this case it didn't work out. But through this, I figured out that there's a lot to learn about having conversations. And with this in mind, I want to bring this up in this video with you guys so that you don't make the same mistake as I have. To start off, we need to think about what the main goal in a conversation becomes as a person who's involved in one. Oftentimes, when you start a conversation with someone, it's really going to be a lot of small talk. But to open this conversation up into something that's deeper and more meaningful, we need to really prioritize building a level of trust with them, helping them open up to deeper discussions through showing respect and giving them a safe space to start discussions that really mean something to the both of you. In short, you're trying to show them that you value and care about what they say, giving them the confidence to open up. But to start off, we need to differentiate between two different types of conversations you can have. On the one hand, you can have a one-to-one conversation. It only involves two people and you're speaking to only one person. Or you could be a part of a wider group and the conversation is involving all of you. To start off, let's speak about the very basics of having a one-to-one conversation with another person. For starters, we really need to hold a good level of eye contact. Having eye contact really creates a personable feeling where the other person has the impression that you really care about speaking to them. It shows attention, it shows that you are engaged in the conversation. And when you start off that way, then it gives them the opportunity to believe that they can open up. Of course, there is a reason to not do too much eye contact. Sometimes that becomes uncomfortable and that can dissuade them from continuing the conversation, or at least being genuine with continuing the conversation. Have a good measure of having eye contact most of the time, but at some moments also looking away a little bit and then focusing back on their eyes so that it becomes a little bit more natural and it looks less forced. In addition to holding eye contact, you have to speak with a certain level of calmness and clarity because that gives them a much easier time understanding you and conversing with you. Speaking calmly involves, for one, speaking at a slightly slower pace so that each word that you say can be pronounced very clearly so that the other person doesn't have to maybe struggle with some sort of slurred word that you do say. Not a slur, but if I almost mumble because I'm speaking so fast that I can't really intonate the word properly. It's also important that you it's especially important that you pay attention to whatever accent you may have. The accent may make it much more difficult for the other person to pay attention to you and to feel engaged. So especially when you do have a certain accent that they may not understand, it's even more important that you speak slower so that they can really hear what you're saying. Now that we've gotten past the basics, we come to things that a lot of people don't keep in mind. The next thing that we need to consider is giving the other person an opportunity to speak out. That means that we're not solely focused on speaking, but we also focus on giving us, first of all, a chance to listen to them, and more importantly, giving them a chance to speak out as well. We often think that it's not our responsibility to give the other person a chance to speak, but in a conversation, both partners carry an equal responsibility for upholding the conversation and making sure that it is fulfilling and satisfying. This also means that you should keep your words succinct. You should not try to elongate your explanations beyond what is reasonable. It's not just about that though. It's about showing respect to them. It's showing that you care. If you prioritize, and this is a really important thing to remember. If you are prioritizing listening to them, they will feel valued and they will be more open to continuing the conversation. Adding on to that, unless you are answering a question that they've asked or adding some sort of discussion point, we should look to provide opportunities for discussions to start. And we do that by asking questions, especially questions that are directed at them, about them. This doesn't have to be any direct thing necessarily. You could ask them about how they do things or what they think about a certain situation, or you can ask something about their life depending on the context of the discussion and conversation. But this is a very influential way to show how you care about them in this conversation. You are focusing the attention on them. We all love to speak about ourselves. So if we use that and give the other person the opportunity to talk about themselves or something through their own view or lens, then they are much more engaged in the conversation and they will keep upholding that throughout the conversation. This also promotes us listening to them more carefully because we're trying to find opportunity to ask more contextual questions about them and spark new discussions. So it is a win-win scenario. Talking to one person is something we could probably manage without any further practice because we've done that before. But what happens when we are in a group and we are all having a conversation? The dynamics change a little bit. Still, the core concepts stay the same. They transfer from a one-to-one conversation to a group conversation. The best conversationalists will always be able to keep a balance between speaking and listening. And this is so important, especially when multiple people are speaking. We have to keep in mind that everyone wants to contribute something to the conversation and not just you. That means that if you are trying to take up all the time, then many of the people in this group will feel disengaged. They will not feel heard. They will not feel like they're really involved in this conversation and they will start feeling disengaged. This also means that we have to focus on being succinct, delivering precise words to convey what you wanted to say without dragging it on, giving the other person time to ask questions or deliver their own opinion as well. However, and this is something that's quite difficult to get to terms with, not everyone will think this way in a conversation. Some people might still speak a lot more, have lengthy explanations that are repetitive and that might irritate you. You cannot ignore that and just say that everyone has to be the way that I've described. This is where it's so important to hold respect for everyone, regardless of how they're speaking, regardless of their behavior. We often think that counterattacking and voicing our displeasure just like that is going to solve things. People are going to see you and your opinion and say, right, I'm sorry, I'm gonna talk your way. But that's not how it goes. A lot of people have their ways of speaking ingrained into them, and if you start attacking them like that, it only makes the situation much more tense and a lot more uncomfortable than it has to be. In a conversation, we all are gonna have different needs and wants, so we have to keep that in mind, especially when we detect that someone is speaking in a different way that may bother you a little bit. At times, in order to keep that engagement, we need to respect that they are that way, which also means that we condone it and we give them fuel to feel engaged in the conversation. If you make the other people in a group feel engaged, then they will also be more receptive to you. You can't take anything from the conversation before you give. Even if other people try to do that, we can't carry ourselves that way, because if everyone does that, then no one's really taking any value or feeling any good sentiment towards that conversation. Of course, if it's absolutely necessary to tell them that what they are doing makes you feel irritated, you can communicate it, but again, be very, very careful. Approach it with kindness and compassion at the forefront, and be very, very gentle when you communicate that maybe the way that they speak does not really appeal to you and you wish to be heard more. Just like in one-to-one conversations, you want to continue to actively show your interest in the conversation. It's up to you to create your own engagement, but to show the other person that you are engaged, there are certain signs that you can use, whether implicit or explicit. I've come to learn that when you speak to them with an open body posture, something like this, I don't know if you can see it. If you speak with this sort of body posture and you kind of take the space a little bit with your hands without going too far, just waving your hands here and there, that is a much more welcoming position than if you are closed, if you're locking your hands together under your chest and you speak like this. And then we come back to the idea of maintaining a high level of eye contact. The eye contact ensures that these words are actually felt beyond the surface. They don't bounce away, but you really feel what they are saying and you carry a greater sentiment to what they are saying. You could also react in a positive way. I mean, if there is something that they're saying that you find funny, give a chuckle, like laugh a little bit, right? Just be relaxed and show them that what they are saying is really being received by you and received well. That being said, don't try to fake it if the connection really is not there. If what they're saying is not really appealing to you, don't just try and laugh or something like that. That's just going to become fake. We're not here to really please that person necessarily. We're here to give them respect and then incite a very fulfilling conversation. That is different from outright pleasing them and appeasing whatever they are saying just because you want to keep them happy. Even if they're saying something that you don't like, you can create even more engagement by trying to break that down. It's engagement for both you and the other person, where you start questioning why they think that way or why they would say whatever they said. Because through that, not only do they feel like you actually care about what they've just said, but you also bring more value out for you to take about that person's opinions and why they think that way or why they would say that. And that just creates a much more positive spirit. In the end, a conversation should not be about finding someone that agrees with you on everything. In fact, it's the opposite. It's more about having two people who do not think the same way, but can still talk to each other in a very constructive, fulfilling and satisfying way because they are genuinely prioritizing the wellness of the other person. What happens if we mess up a conversation despite working on our conversation skills and applying everything that I've mentioned in this video? Here's the reality. It's always going to happen to some extent. They're going to just be conversations where you have a slip up, and that's okay, because as long as you are willing to learn from that and try to implement those new things, then it really doesn't matter that you make mistakes. In fact, sometimes it's good that you make mistakes, because the mistakes is how you realize that you have things to learn, you get feedback, and you can act on that feedback. Now, the real question is whether the other person will reciprocate that. And if they won't, then in no uncertain terms, it will be difficult to speak to that person. If that person's going to judge you for something that you've messed up, but you, especially after a good conversation that you've had, and they take it so seriously that they become averse to you, then you will have to consider whether that person was the right one to talk to. Regardless of how they speak, what they say, what opinions they have, if you want to have a constructive conversation, then it requires respect from both sides. It cannot be one-sided. That obviously doesn't mean that you should be disrespectful. By all means, you have to show respect all the time, regardless of behavior, but don't sell yourself for less than what you think you're worth in a conversation. In the end, when that meetup came, I wasn't really in the zone to apply any of this, and I messed up. I don't know if the people who I've met, who are also subscribers to my YouTube channel, will see this, but if you do, I'm really sorry. I hope that I can show remorse and I can be better, because that's my intention. My intention is to learn from these incidents and make sure that I carry myself more in such situations. In the end, however, I won't be lingering on this one conversation, this one meetup forever, because if I do, then I kind of stop in time and I don't focus on the next conversations that I could have. Therefore, I'm going to take these learnings that I've gotten, most of them which I've listed in this video, and start applying them in similar contexts and similar situations so that I can become a better communicator. Remember, regardless of who you are and what abilities you have, if you can communicate it, then you double or amplify how other people perceive you and how other people give you that respect and that kindness and that compassion, which leads to these amazing conversations. And on that bombshell, thank you so much for watching this video. If you've enjoyed this video, then I would really appreciate you liking the video, and if you're new to the channel, then I would also really appreciate you subscribing to the channel, becoming a follower, even though you're absolutely not forced to do it. Of course, if you think that what I've said is helpful, you can also share this around. If there's any feedback, because this is also something new for me, then please go ahead and write that in the comment section. I'll be really, really grateful to see that. So until then, take care, stay safe because you deserve it, and cheers until the next video.